Hello and welcome to another edition of the When Calls the Heart After Show. I am your host, James Lott Jr. Shout out to my girl, Marissa Serafini. Now, it's a little different, folks. As you saw in the title, we're not talking about the actual show. We're talking about something that show begat, which is a musical. But I want to tell you something. So yesterday, it was my birthday weekend, and I went to see Six, the musical, here in Los Angeles, which is about the wives of Henry VIII. I took my brother, who's 50 years old, who never saw a musical in his life, there for the first time, and he loved it. The reason why I bring this up is that there are newer musicals happening all the time on subjects or shows that you like, and there's nothing like live theater. I'm telling you, now he's hooked. I got him hooked. I already love live theater, but now he's hooked. So why I'm talking about all this is because some of you guys know this already and some may not. There is a When Calls the Heart, the musical that debuted several years ago during COVID, yes, in the Midwest. I love the Midwest,
Right.
at the Round Barn Theater. But we're going to talk to the person who literally spearheaded this thing. And we're going to talk about how she brought it together. She's the executive director and producer over at the Round Barn Theater in Indiana. And I'm here in Los Angeles, but we're together. Help me welcome Christy Stutzman. Hi, Miss Christy.
Hi, it's so good to be with you. This is exciting. I'm so thrilled to be able to be on here with you and talk about this project. It's been a journey. Like I told you, it's been an adventure.
So I want to go. Okay, so now first of all, I heard this thing. I'm not sure, but I heard that. Were you in politics before this?
Well, kind of, yeah. So I was married to a guy who was in politics for a while, and then I was actually an elected official for a couple years as well before doing this. So, music is always my passion, and I was a voice major in college and studied opera for a while, and have always written. And so it's kind of been my therapy, I guess you could call it. It's like and even while I was serving in elected office, there was one day when I had a deadline for one of my musicals. It was called A Musical Christmas Carol, and I was hoping that nobody was seeing on my computer that I was working on lyrics. But it was kind of a boring, slow day, and so I was like, all I could think about was these lyrics I had to write.
I love it.
So yeah, I mean, I've always kind of had dabbled in music most of my life. So
Well, see, and I bring that up because the person I used to be working in the corporate world, I used to work in farm and ag insurance.
oh wow, yeah,
So I
very
was always in the
familiar.
Midwest, going to different places,
Midwest, yeah.
turkey ranches and cranberry bogs. But the point is, art, as I always said, my should I arted. Um, Art does cross barriers. It crosses professions. If you
Yeah.
are artistic in any way, it's still there. Whether
Oh
whatever.
yeah.
That's why I'm so glad you said that. It was always still you were still doing it while you were doing
Yep.
something else.
Oh, it's a unifying language, it's a universal language. And it really it brings people together just in all different ways. And that's what I absolutely love about it. I started when I was in, I don't know, elementary, getting involved in the arts. My dad was a playwright and a composer, so I was just kind of grew up around it. And so it felt normal to me. But the thing that I actually kind of stands out from my high school years. I mean, I played sports and I did other things, but I was in band. But the times that we had productions that we did, we were a team, and it wasn't just the people on the stage. It was the tech, it was the costumes, it was makeup, it was everybody. And I loved getting my fingers in all of it. And then the bond that you create at the end, whether you're in, a music group or whatever production you're in, there's always a special bond. And I think sometimes the arts get looked at as an extra, and to me they are essential. I don't know that I could live without them. And so that's something that I keep, I'm fighting for. And that's one of the things I was passionate about when I was in elected office, was fighting for the arts, because it seems like the music programs are the first things to get cut and not the football team. I mean, that's, to me, that's like, wow, wait a minute, there's a lot of kids that probably won't make this big team, but they will be able to be involved in some aspect of a theatrical production. So it brings together so many talents and so many abilities into one team, and then you make these lifelong memories that never go away. I mean, in lifelong friendships. And I love it, and I think it's very important for our culture to have.
You're my new best friend. Okay, it's already decided. There's there's saying things that I say all the time on my shows, and a lot of my fans know out there. I fight for the arts because I just really do
Mm,
think they
yep.
many longtime fans know I have grandkids. I don't believe it or not. I have grandkids. And the first set they went to art-based schools.
Mm,
So they were called Leonardo da Vinci schools, and they had art
wow.
a major program. Leonardo da Vinci, of course,
Yeah.
major part of the program. And I'm telling you, my grandkids are smart. I mean, they do very well in sports and in math and sciences, but they're
Right.
also artistic.
Hmm.
So they have great talents in there. And I think it's good to have kids that are well rounded because you said later
Exactly.
on, no offense to anybody, but your sports are great, but only if you
Yeah.
actually make it into professional sports.
Exactly. Yeah.
Things
Yeah.
like arts, you can do a lot of things in art. Like you say, you can be behind the scenes or front of the scenes. There's a lot of things you can do when it comes to
Oh,
media and production.
yeah. And it's just an expression of humankind. And and there's so much variety, that and then I think that's the part that I really liked about writing, because I had never really tried my hand at writing until I was probably, well, I wrote music from the time I was 5. I wrote my first song, and that was published. And then I just kind of dabbled in it for most of my life. In college, I started writing a lot more. And then after college, I started really getting into it. And what I loved about it was the brainstorming process and bringing everybody to the table and seeing their different perspectives, and then kind of landing on something that worked, because it was kind of through composed. And that part, the brainstorming part, I absolutely love as well, because you get to hear everybody's perspective, and you get to hear their different takes artistically and how they would present something. And it's so fun too to hand over your piece of whatever you've written, whether it's a song or dialogue or something, and you hand it over to an actor or a singer, and you hear their interp of what you wrote, and you see it come alive in a different way, or they emphasize something that you didn't really think was there and you never realized. I mean, you wrote it, but they take it and do something, wow, and you're like, oh my word, I love that. So I love that process of starting from scratch, kind of. And we have the story, we have the characters, but just getting together around the table and brainstorming with the team that we had was just, it was a lot of fun. I want to do it again.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you something. I totally agree. And because I have audio dramas out there that I've written, and I'll tell you,
Oh, cool.
people, I tell them the biggest high that I've ever gotten. And I remember the first time I heard, I had a show called Mistletoe Road. It's still out there. It's on audio dramas. But I had the actors read the first page of what I wrote. I started crying. I'm a
Oh,
grown man in my 40s crying. And I was just
yeah.
like, because there really isn't, you just hit it. It's like there's nothing like it because you're like, you have your own, you wrote it. So you have your own
Right.
feeling of what it might be. But then
Hmm.
someone reads it, maybe in a certain voice or a
Yeah.
situation. And you're right, they pick up something in it that they see, and you're like,
Hmm.
that works even better. Like you're like, I just started stopping. Imagine they stopped. You're like, why are you crying? I'm like, is it that bad? I go, no, it's that good. I'm fine. Give me a second.
It's good. It's
It's
good.
good. It's great. But seriously, there's no. I'm sorry, there's no greater high than somebody reading your work.
Yeah,
I
it's
agree with
true.
that. I mean, like
Yeah.
completely, like, completely. So you hit that nail right on the head. So I want to lead to. I can talk to you. I can tell her I can talk to you forever. Uh, I guess I get to the. So okay, so you have the Round Barn Theater. So can you explain the theater? Where exactly is it in Indiana and all of that first? Let's get that.
Sure. Yeah. So the Round Barn Theater's been around for like 50 years, or actually more. It's over 100 years old, and it was moved from, like, I think it was like 5 to 10 miles down the road where it is now, to a property where a gentleman was kind of collecting barns and old buildings. And so it's kind of like this collection of cabins, like pioneer cabins. I mean, it's right around a farm that is on the historical registry. And I think it's the only Amish farm that is on the historical registry. It was the original pioneer house that was built by some of the first Amish to settle in the area called Napanee. And so they still have the original house, and then they have what's called a Dottie house, which is their grandfather's house. So they build them right behind each other. And you can tour it, and you can see like how the Amish lived back in the day when they first arrived on the frontier. But then beside that, he took the round barn from a local farm and rebuilt it like piece by piece with Amish carpenters. They numbered every piece before they took it apart and then rebuilt it exactly the way it was, except they took off the back side of it and they expanded it for a stage and for some fly space and, side stage areas, and then dressing rooms. So it's kind of attached to the back of the round barn. But when you go into, and they built like a little lobby off of it as well. So as you actually go into the theater itself, when you look up, which everybody does, the ceiling is absolutely a work of art. It's got this pattern of wood pieces so intricately designed that people have actually taken pictures of it and put it on their walls. I mean, it's just really beautiful. It's like a beautiful dome, that you would see somewhere. And I think the only downside, we see about 400 people. We're about an hour south of the Michigan border,
Oh, okay.
in north central Indiana. So we're like 30 minutes from South Bend, Notre Dame,
Okay.
that area.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a nice central location. I'd say it take like 2 hours to drive from Chicago, 2-ish hours from Detroit, and about 3 hours from Indianapolis. So it's, my husband says we're in the middle of everywhere, and I say we're in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, we're just in the middle. So
It's kind of both. Maybe it's kind of both. Maybe it's kind of both.
yeah, it is. You have to drive to get there, but it definitely is an Amish country, and it really is beautiful. Very rural. You're going to see a lot of Amish. It used to be called Amish Acres, and we still call it the home of Amish Acres. But when we took the name Amish out of the title, what we found was a lot more Amish started coming to our restaurant and to the theater.
Okay.
I don't know if it was because they didn't like the Amish name was in the title or what it was, but we call it the Barns at Napanee. And so we have a restaurant there and a theater, and we have gift shops and a pretzel place and coffee and ice cream and lots of shopping and an antique shop. So it's a nice little one day. Actually, you could take a full day shopping there and seeing the theater and eating and not see everything. But the theater itself has been a Broadway rep theater for 50 years. My husband and I and some of our partners bought it in February of 2020. So right before COVID hit, we were like, yay, and then
Oh my God.
so it's been a challenge, but at the same time, I think it's been, I told my staff and my team, I said, we're creatives. So this is our challenge moment, and this is when we shine. So let's think outside the box and let's conquer this thing, So we really worked hard. And one of the reasons I wrote When Calls the Heart was that we had a production company. I'd started it like 3 years before we bought the theater, and I bought some titles that I would want to do. And When Calls the Heart was number one on my list. I'm a big Heartie, and I had talked to Brian Bird and I said, when are you going to do a musical? Because I love Broadway,
Yes.
love musicals.
Yes. Yes.
And he's like, well, that's not my thing, but I'm sure somebody will. And so I chewed on that for a while because I love the story. I love Elizabeth. I love her character, her spunk, and her humanness. And so when we bought the theater, I had that title, and I told my team, I said, well, I guess now's the time to write it. And I had 5.5 months to write 22 songs and fully orchestrate it. And I was driving between northern Indiana, which is 6-ish hours from Nashville, to Nashville, back and forth multiple times, trying to get the tracks done and record all that. We didn't have any demos for the cast. So I had to bang it out and teach them the songs. And we had a music director as well, and they were working on it 24/7. We were giving them demos with like the piano playing it, or I would sing it, just to let them know what it was supposed to sound like. But I was also bringing in the cast and having them sing through things, and I was actually customizing it to voices, specific voices. And I'd never done that before. I had done it one time for like a quartet, but this is totally different. You're talking like, the recitative part of aria type of thing where you're going from interaction to singing the main solo. And so that was definitely fun, bringing them in and having them sing it and going, yeah, no, that's not working. So I'm going to change that, or I'm going to adjust the key or whatever. So it was definitely in microcosm, it was a workshopping in a 5.5 months period. As I rolled off the press, they sang them, they practiced them, we adjusted it, we tried it again. In fact, this one kid, he was playing a role in it, and I sent him. I called him and I said, "Hey, I'm in Nashville. I got a track. I got to check and see if it's going to work for you." I said, "Can I send it to you?" He goes, "Well, I'm at the beach right now." And I said, "Oh, well, can you get it on your phone?" And he goes, "I'll try." So he climbs in his car and he listens to it and he sings along with it. And I sent him the PDF of the score. And
Yes.
then he calls me back. "Yeah, I think it needs to be like a half step lower." And I'm like, "Okay, good to know. I'm in the studio."
I love it. I love it. I love
So
it.
it was that type of process. I don't want to ever really go through that much of a squished time again,
Yes.
but it was definitely, like I said, it was an adventure.
I want people to know at home, put in a little context. To write 22 songs in like 5 months. I mean, people think it's not, it's a creative process, and you can't really put it, you can't put a time on creativity, kind of. You can,
Kind of, yeah.
right. So people at home should know that this is an extraordinary feat, because I scored a soundtrack, and it took me a full year to do
Yeah,
it, and that was like maybe 13 songs. So I mean, like, it took me
yeah,
a full year, because for you, you're creating the storyline in song,
right.
and like I said, trying to figure out who's. I mean, it's a male lead, a female lead background. Like, it's, and the songs are really beautiful. They're very lush. I love them. They're very
Thank you.
theatrical.
Yes,
That when I
yeah.
heard the songs, I was like, okay, no, they sound like they're on stage. Like, it sounds like that's what, you know. I really love it.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
I just want people at home to know that usually they could be done. She did it, obviously, it could be done, but it's not a normal. She said it's not a normal way.
Right. And I think because of my love for the story and my love for the characters, I mean, I had read her books when I was in high school, and actually the Canadian West series, I read them probably 3 times. And so I loved that story. And I think just years of knowing the characters and then watching the TV series, and just chewing on it, it really helped. It just started flowing out. Now, I will say, when I got to and that the auction isn't recorded. It's only on the video. We didn't have time to record the auction, but the auction is actually, it reminds me of the opening scene in Music Man, where it's all spoken in time, and I kind of went with this bluegrass feel underneath the auction. But the guy had to speak it in time, and then there was dialogue in between auction part 1, 2, and 3. And so then I would start, and I had a chorus that they all sang together, and then he would start auctioning again, and the chorus, and they all sang, right? So by the time I got to part 3, I was like, "Oh Lord, just get me through this song. I'm so tired of this. I don't want to hear this song again."
Yeah, talking through a song is not on time. It's not as easy as you think it is. It's not as easy. I've
Yeah,
done it
so rhyming
once.
it and making it sound like an auction was a challenge. I thought, if I could just get through this, I think I'll survive. But there were times when, and I wasn't sleeping much. I mean, I get up in the morning and my office is in my house, and so I'd say, "Hey guys, how you doing?" to my family, and then I'd close the door and I'd go to work. But so there was a time, though, where I just could not find the right chord I just couldn't find it. And so finally I just had to take a break and walk away. I said a prayer. I said, "Please just help me, Lord." And I just put my hands on the keys, and boom, there was the chord. It was there. And I didn't dare move my fingers. I just looked at him and I'm like, "Okay, write it down, write it down."
That is, yes. Divine intervention. I know how that is sometimes. Just like it types itself. It works itself.
It
Yes.
was there. It was there.
I want to ask you something. So not going too much of the weeds, but I love this kind of stuff because I'm a writer too. Um, okay, so I read the books also, and actually we reviewed the books. We did a whole book club on it. The books.
Sweet.
And the books obviously are different than the series. So
Right.
tell folks who have not seen the musical or heard of it, does it follow the books or does it follow the series?
Good question. Okay, so it follows the books.
Okay.
So she ends up with Jack. I think they actually get like engaged or married in the second book, from what I remember, not
Yes,
the
yes.
first book.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
so I kind of like, I bought the titles to both in case I needed to like I didn't know if I was going to do it all in one, show, if I was going to have to do two. Ended up doing
Oh,
it in one
wow.
show. Because it's tough. It's tough to, total strangers, to you have to give the background
Yes.
the story if they haven't seen anything or read it. And so I did that in the first song called Toronto.
I love
My
that.
one
Actually, I love that song. I love that song.
Thank you. My one compromise, I guess, with the story was like, okay, I know there's going to be TV fans here who love Jack.
Yes.
And the name of the guy in the book is Win Delaney.
That's right.
And
Yes.
so my compromise was, okay, when you're on stage, the name Win can be like, it can be misunderstood for when, you know what I mean, or I win or whatever.
Yeah.
And so Jack is definitely a name, and you recognize it. And so I decided to go with Jack, but I kept the last name Delaney. So it's Jack Delaney as the
Now
Mountie.
I get it. No, that's okay.
And then the other compromise I made was, she goes to what's the name of it? It's something Spring. Something Spring in the book. And then in the TV series, it's Hope Valley. And it was
It was
something
Hope
Valley.
Valley first, and then became
Hope
Hope.
Valley.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
it's Hope Valley, right?
Yeah.
So we compromised with the name too. Pine Valley. So it was Pine Springs or Hope Valley. So we went with Pine Valley. So that's a little different from the book. But the other thing is, and I had a lot of Hearties tell me afterwards that they said, well, thank you so much for letting her marry the Mountie and not killing him off, and stuff like that. And I'm like,
I'm sure. No,
yeah, I
I'm
mean, that's the
sure.
difference. That's a difference in a 2.5 hour show and then a long running TV series. You just have to, like Little House on the Prairie, they had to,
Yeah.
kind of vary the story in order to keep going. But yeah, it's really neat. They get together at the end, they get engaged at least. And the final song is One Calls the Heart. And it's kind of a reprise of all of the songs together. And then it ends with that.
That's
So
cute. That's cute. That's cute. Also, I like that. No, because the books are different, folks. The books are different. They're good. We really enjoyed them. They're really good.
right.
There's some heartbreak in some of those. Oh my god! So
There is. In fact, it was so hard. Like there were certain things about the story, like subplots that I just hated to leave out. But when you're looking at this short time frame, if I go down that road, I'm not going to be able to explain everything around it and tie it up with a bow at the end, And so I tried to implement some of those, like Andy, his story is just so sweet throughout the whole thing, and it's tragic. And so I brought Andy in, and I kind of like talked about how he was sick and he needed, surgery and stuff like that. And the other thing that I really was able to highlight with this is a little more of her family's relationship. So there's a moment in the book that I cry at every time I read it, and it's when her father takes her. He's like so supportive, right? He's like,
yes.
you go, honey, you just do your thing. And he's just like letting her have wings and fly. And so he takes her downtown and buys her a hat, a beautiful hat, before she gets on the train. And I just think it is the sweetest gesture of a father who's struggling, to let her go, especially in that time period,
Yes.
to let her go that far away. She's not married, she's like on her own, but he's so proud of her. And he just buys her this beautiful hat to send her off. And so that moment is what I wrote the song for. And it's Does He Know? Where she's talking about, in the back of her mind, does he know how much he means to me? Does he know how hard this is? And then he sings, does she know, how this is killing me, basically, and I'm dying inside, but at the same time, I'm so proud of her.
So yeah, so the books. And so folks, I suggest people actually read the books too. They're fun. They're fun to read. There's all kinds of stuff going on in there. Don't expect it to be like the movie. It's a little different, but to me, it's the same heart and soul and messages and everything. They're still in there. And I've had the pleasure of meeting and being around Janette Oke several times. Love her. I mean, she's just like amazing. Warm spirit, just warm spirit. So okay, now I want all the tea. I want to know. So who do you talk to first? Is you're writing this thing. So you say you talked to Brian first, or have you talked to Janette? Like what is like? How did all that kind of? Because that's previous material.
Yeah. Well, okay, so since this was probably it was the first season that I saw it advertised on Hallmark and was like, oh, I love those books. I better check it out. I hope it's done well. You know what I mean? Like when you love books, and you just kind of hope that, So it was, and my boys were, let's see, they were 10 and 6 at the time, and so I was always looking for for shows that I could enjoy along with them. because some of the shows that they watched, I just couldn't. I mean, it was yeah. So we watched it together, and there was enough adventure and humor and human stories that my whole family enjoyed it. I mean, we really sat down as a family, and everybody liked it. And I thought, man, I'm so glad this was done well, and I'm also glad that it got produced. And then my mind started running to, well, like, I wonder what it took to produce this, because I'd love to see more programming like this. There were just so many themes. I remember one of the episodes, it was dealing with a guy who had lost his leg. He had to have an amputation because of um, the the accident that happened, you know, in the coal mine.
Yeah.
And when he came back, he kind of had PTSD, and he was dealing with like survivor syndrome. Well, I knew a lot of military families that had dealt with those same issues. And I just thought, man, they're really, this is a show that they're using to hit things that are happening today in real lives. And we need that. We need a good approach to that and talking about tough issues, but in a way that, you know, I can sit down with my kids and feel comfortable watching it. And so I was reaching out, I think it was on Twitter. It was Twitter or Facebook, trying to find somebody. I was looking at the names on the TV screen, like who produced this. And I saw Brian Bird and Brad Cravoy and a couple others. So I started looking for them on social media. You know, you love this age where you can
I
actually
love
try
it.
to
I
reach
do. I
out to
love
these
it.
people.
Love it.
So I reached out and said, hey, I'm a mom of two little boys, and I absolutely love your show. I would love to know what it took to produce this, and how can we get more? And is there going to be more seasons? You know, just had all these questions. And Brian Bird wrote back to me, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my word, this is one of the writers, producers, and he's writing back to me. And he goes, I don't think you want to hear how long of a story this is that it took to produce this. But I said, no, no, I do. I really want to know what it took. And so we kind of communicated a little bit. I think it was Facebook Messenger or Twitter or something. And so I was out in Virginia. My husband was in Congress at the time. And I said, you know, some of the stories that you've told me about what it took to produce this it's absolutely ridiculous. I said, some of it is government related regulations or bureaucracy or whatever. And I really think people should know about this, especially people that can make a difference on these issues. Because if you were blocked, you know, you have ran into all kinds of trouble. Who knows who else has run into that? And what if there's a way to make it easier for you guys to produce content like this? And so we invited him out and had him speak and just told a story, you know, of what he had to go through to produce it. And so then he was like, hey, you know what, you guys, you should come to the set. And of course, I was like in awe. I was kind of like starstruck.
Right?
I told my husband, I said, for my vacation this year, for our family vacation, I want to go to Vancouver and see the set. That's what I want to do. So we planned our family vacation to go up there and visit the set.
Yes.
And there I got to talk to Brad Cravoy. I got to talk to Aaron Krakow. And I really saw what they were doing as far as like the storylines and how they were collaborating with each other on which way to go with the storylines. And I just thought it was a really neat atmosphere and culture on set. I love that part. And so then I stayed in contact with Brian after that. And as we, you know, bought this theater and stuff, I told him, I said, well, I'm thinking about doing one called The Heart, the Musical. And I said, I need to reach out to the publisher and make sure everything's okay and stuff. So he got me connected with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how it happened.
It was funny because this show, I was working at a place called AfterBuzz TV here in North Hollywood. It was a channel, and I was a host and producer. And one of my producers, Miss Serafini, was like, James, you liked Little House on the Prairie. You liked the Waltons. Like, yeah, that was my time period. I like all this stuff. I used to check. So here's your homework. Here's the film. Here's the first season. Tell us what you think. You have a weekend to watch it. Tell us what you think. These little things. Yes, ma'am. I mean, she's like half my age. I do whatever she tells me. Yes, ma'am. What do you want?
Smart,
and yeah, I grew up with 7 sisters. I listen to my women, and the women tell me what to do. I just do what they tell me. I'm smart.
Yeah. Very smart. Yeah.
Very smart. But I watched it, and of course the film's a little different. They're different actors, a whole different thing. But I enjoyed it so much because it reminded me of that. When you said about the family thing, for me, which got me was the Cody storyline in the first season,
Mm,
Cody, his sister, and Abigail. And it's that
yes.
whole thing. It was like because it's again, they do what they do really well on this show is they have the children's stories and the adult
Yeah.
stories, and they kind of work. So all
Right.
just can watch it and relate on some level. They've always
Right.
they have great child actors, great. I've interviewed many of them, but great child actors.
Yeah, they're
So
great.
I just want to make sure I say that because I was like, I just that's nothing too I love. But I love that kind of programming. That's kind of stuff I liked
Mhm.
also. I loved watching that stuff. But it's just it's just like I mean, yes, I did watch my zombies and stuff too, but I like but this stuff was like I mean, it was like I always call it comfort food, and Brian always laughs when I say
Mhm.
it's like I said, it feels like when I'm eating cornbread and I'm eating a good
Oh,
steak
yeah.
or something. Like it's I always feel good afterwards. I
Yes.
watch an
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so uplifting. It really is, and the way they run the storylines and stuff, it keeps your attention. But there's, like I said, there's so many relatable storylines that they have going, and I mean, when with the whole debate about who she was going to marry and things like that,
Oh
I
yeah, I
think that
remember
was
all
a
that. Yes, I
fun.
remember all that. Yes.
I mean, I know it was difficult, but at the same time, I really feel like that was a fun exercise in exploring how you would react in that situation. If you lose someone that you love so much and then you try to move on and trying to make the decision of, what do I do and do I love again and just all those things. I just think that they really made it relatable. I mean, I have friends who have lost a spouse and it's
Yeah.
it's a very, very difficult time. I think they just handled it so well. Showing the tragedy, but also showing triumph is just it's something that we need to see more of
Yeah.
for sure.
But also it's a great exercise for the audience, like, so should she go back with another Mountie?
Yeah.
Everybody just assumes that'll be a thing, so it's so
Right.
yeah, I agree. We won't get into it too much because, like I said, I lived through the whole situation of that, all that stuff. I wrote a couple books about it too. You can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
I did my books. I did. And but no, but yeah. So I think that just love the show completely. And yes, folks, we're back to season 10, doing the after show. Don't worry, we're doing back for that. Um, okay,
Awesome.
so this is all pre-pandemic. We didn't know
Right.
pandemic was coming. You're writing a show. You're putting it together bit by bit. A little Broadway. You're putting it together and all this stuff. So, what was the plan? Like, did you have a plan on when originally you wanted to release it? Was it always the same date, or was it something different?
Yeah, I always say that I had a 5-year plan that turned into a 5.5-month plan.
And that's fast. Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of like this rushed process out of necessity because really we couldn't get licensing out of New York for any shows. They froze licensing during that time. And we had worked very closely with our health department, making sure that we had all these protocols in place and stuff like that. And it really wasn't like extremely bad in our area after a certain period of time. And so we really had to kind of scramble to find things to do. Luckily, I had an agreement with one contract, one license. We did Into the Woods that year, and we didn't open until I think it was July or August of that year, and that even was early.
Yeah.
And we had all these limitations, that we were going through. I mean, the long list of protocols we had to do, just protecting the actors, protecting everybody, and we opened successfully. It was slow at first, but at the same time, we kind of found our way through that first year. And during that time that we were mounting 3 shows for one season, that's all we could fit in. We usually do 6 to 7.
Yeah.
I was writing When Calls the Heart and hoping that it would be better, the next year. And
Yeah.
it was somewhat better. But When Calls the Heart was the highlight, I believe, of our year. That next year in 2021. And so during COVID, and I think there was a lot of people that were creating during that time when you're locked down and at home and you're kind of just like you have time to think. I think a lot of people started writing, and I think that's a good thing. I'm thrilled with so many new things coming out and new talent being discovered because they had that extra time on their hands where they said, "Well, now's the time. Let's do it." So
I'll say,
I had
Chris, I
fun.
want to say something really quick about that because I love you said that. I just want to piggyback really quick and say, I think I always said this out of kind of tragic times, we do get beautiful art sometimes. You go in the
Yes.
past, some things are beauty can be born out of a
Mm,
time that could be not so beautiful. And I think,
right.
and I agree with you. So many of my friends are like, well, I'm finally going to do this. So I'm going to finally, because we had, well, in LA, everything locked down in LA. So we all were at home
Yeah.
doing, what are we going to do next? But
You had time.
I want to say that I think that's something I always say. I think that beauty can be born out of non-beautiful times.
Right. I so agree. And it was, it's thrilling to me as a composer and as a writer to connect with people who are kind of new to it and started at that time. I just really think that there was just all of a sudden this blossoming of discovery, for creative people and creative outlets. And that thrills me because there's nothing more beautiful than an original creation, just kind of giving birth to that and seeing it take wings and fly, and seeing where it goes. But so my plan was, to do the show and then to make it available for licensing. We ended up doing the show 2 years in a row because of COVID, and it was still not good in
Yeah,
2021. And there was a lot of people who wanted to see it.
I'm sure.
We did a second run of it in 2022, and that went really well. So we were thrilled with that. And then my next job, I guess, was getting it ready for licensing. And so we are licensing it. I'm getting inquiries all the time. There's a premiere of it down in Florida. Two groups are doing it down in Florida. And then there's also going to do a run in a much smaller theater. I'm going to have to customize it a little bit for them, but it's called the Blue Gate Theater in Shipshewana, Indiana, which again is a Amish community. And so they're doing When Calls the Heart next year, August through December, I believe. So that's kind of been my goal, is to get it out there. Now, I mean, I'd love to see it on big stages or take it on a tour to, different big cities. That's kind of my dream as well. And we could do that eventually. But because of COVID and everything, we just don't have,
Yeah.
the wherewithal to pay for that. It's really expensive to do. But we had talked about it, and we actually visited Branson and a couple other
I
places.
was gonna say Brampton. I was gonna say that. Yeah.
Yeah, Pigeon Forge, we
Yeah.
looked at those, and it just financially wasn't gonna work for us at the time, but that's kind of our hope and dream, is to take it on the road a little bit. So
If I was rich, I'd bring it to Los Angeles if I could. If I was rich, I'd bring it here.
yeah.
We have great theaters here. I would love to see it on a big theater. I'd love to see
I
it on
would too.
Broadway. I'd love to see it on Broadway,
Oh,
even
that
off
yeah,
Broadway. That'd be like a
I
dream,
would
right?
love that.
Dream.
Well, I mean, shows like Six and others, I mean, they've started off in a smaller venue,
Yeah.
and then I think there's been some that went on like cruises, cruise
Yes.
ships,
Yes. 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 Yes.
and then they make it to Broadway,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
the path to Broadway is not the same as it used to be
Right.
in years before. So, I mean, I think all bets are off. I mean, you can kind of go at it the way you want to go at it, but I think my goal would be to take it to places where we have a lot of um, parties, a lot of people who love the show, and there's kind of a demand, for it there. So we're kind of looking at that. But then in the meantime, I'm working on the next one. So
Yeah.
I am working on Janette Oke's Love Comes Softly right now,
I
and
read
writing
that.
that music.
Yes, I know that one. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Oh, good. I love it.
So
Well, so what was Jeanette's? Has she seen the musical? Has she heard about it? What are her thoughts? She has any thoughts with you?
she came last year. She couldn't come 2021 because the borders were closed, and she's up in Canada, and her husband wasn't doing well. Her husband actually passed away in 2021, and so 2022 she hadn't seen her kids who live in my area. They live like 30 minutes away from me. She hadn't seen them, I think she said, in like 4 years. So she came down, planned a big family reunion. The whole family came. But the first year, the family that was in the area came as our special guests. And boy, some of the things they shared were so neat. They shared with us that when their mom was writing the first series of books, they would come home from high school. They were in high school, and she would ask them to help her type out copies of it to send off to publishers and editors. And so her boys had to type these books.
Wow.
And her one son said, after one day of typing, he goes up to his mom. He says, "Mom, I'm sorry, but I just don't think this is going to sell. I mean, it doesn't appeal to me at all. She just looked at him and she said, "That's okay, honey. It's not written for you."
I love it. I love it. Oh my
She
god.
knew her audience
It
for
is your
sure.
audience. See what's going on.
And so he was like, and yep, well, she was right. Mom was right. She was always right.
Yeah.
But they said that, she was just always writing. And I asked her when she came, I said, did you like, she loved it. She was so sweet about it. And she said she really, that we caught the essence of Elizabeth and her comedic timing and her humanness, and Jack too, he stuck his foot in his mouth so many times. And she loved the whole romantic comedy approach to it, because it is a comedy.
Yeah.
It's just so, it's funny. It's really funny, and there's moments in that book that are hilarious,
Mhm.
and then there's moments in the book that are poetic. I think the whole first chapter lends itself to a poetic feel. I mean, when Elizabeth is describing herself and her experience, um, as a writer, as a lyricist, it was easy for me to write poetry out of that. I mean, it just came naturally as I read it. And the other thing that we did with the show that I think sets it apart is we break the fourth wall with Elizabeth. So I wanted to capture how Elizabeth was feeling inside her head, because it was so important to the story, because she would be thinking one thing but then saying another thing, because she didn't really want to say everything she was thinking. And some of the things she was thinking were hilarious. I mean, her reactions to certain people, whether it was, you know, uh, the superintendent out in Calgary, when she Mr. Higgins.
Yes.
There's so many comedic things that she was thinking in her head, this ongoing dialogue, and I hated to miss that. How do you present that on stage and let people know how she's feeling? Well, our team, and our brainstorms
Yeah.
came up with the breaking the fourth wall. Elizabeth will turn to the audience and say what she's thinking. We'll spotlight her in that moment, and then she'll turn back into
Got
the
it.
scene.
Got it. I love that. Yes.
So from the beginning, she's able to kind of be her own narrator.
Yeah.
So she kind of gives you the background of her father, and she tells you, my sister
Uh,
Julie, she's a little over dramatic, blah blah blah, and she says funny things
yeah.
along the way. So you're kind of getting that ongoing dialogue and really, there's a lot of comedic times where she messes up with Jack, and she turns to the audience and says, well, that's embarrassing, and then turns it back to him, and so it really kind of pulls the audience into her world. But it also, instead of her being a perfect little wealthy princess, yeah, she comes from wealth, but boy, is she, down to earth human, making mistakes, and kind of learning as she goes. So it's been a lot of fun.
I love. So I'm so excited to get to see it. Like I said, I've heard the music. I have it on my iPad. I have the music. I wish I could have seen it in person. Maybe one day I will. Maybe one day I
Yeah,
will. So
maybe. Yeah.
yeah.
So one thing that we changed in the second run, and then this again goes to my squished time frame and not being able to workshop it. Every time I heard the Mountie song, it was fine. I mean, it worked. But as a composer, I just kept thinking, I want to fix that. Well, that could be a little better. And I'm constantly critiquing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
wanting to do better. So the second run, I just rewrote the whole Mountie scene, and I rewrote the whole Mountie song. And I like it a lot better, the second version of it. So we haven't put it out there yet, but in the licensing package, we send them the new
Oh,
Mountie scene and the new Mountie song. And I think as a composer, if you want a little insight into why I think it didn't work, was, and this is a mistake that I think I should have known better, but again, it was a rough time. So I think I was trying to imitate a sound. I was going for a certain sound, and I was listening to specific songs over and over again, which is fine. But I think I tried to imitate them too much, and instead of going with my original gut. And so again, I mean, the song works great. It's fine. But I think the other thing that's, I think, little behind the scenes into my mind as I'm rewriting it is, while I was rewriting it, the whole conflict in Ukraine started happening.
oh, okay.
And I started seeing those people you know, normal people
Yeah,
just
yeah.
fighting for their freedom. And it was very poignant. And so I was kind of inspired by that. And I find that, in real life situations, the inspiration comes even more than if I'm trying to imitate someone else's approach to the same subject matter.
Mm,
If I take it from real life, and I allow my heart to be open to a message that I feel like needs to get out there, then the melody flows and then the words flow a little better. And so that's kind of like one of the things that I felt was a little bit of a weakness, and I had the chance, the opportunity on the second run to kind of address it and try my hand at it again.
yeah, yeah, that's very cool, actually, that's good, it's cool you were able to do that, and some musicals have done it before too, they have updated things and,
Yeah.
I said now you're not in that clinch of trying to get something done at a certain time, also you have a little more time, a little more experience behind your back, like, all this stuff comes up and you can, "Let me look
Yeah.
at this song one more time," and, like, really work that out, so I love that, I mean, it's
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I literally could talk to you forever. I mean, I'm so as a Heartie, I was very pleased to see this because I'm also a theater person. I just really think that people should give live theater a chance. I know people go to concerts and stuff. Same deal. Go to
Yes.
when you're in you're part of it. It's an immersive experience when you go to a theater and go to see a musical or a play. You're there. The stage people on stage feel you while you're in the audience, and you can
Yes.
feel them while you're watching them, right? That's the whole thing, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. In fact, if we ever do a video to make it available to the public, I think my one stipulation is going to be, I don't care where the cameras have to be placed or anything like that. I want the audience to be live,
Oh, good,
because
yes.
there's no way you can capture or you can do like a laugh track or anything that is as organic as being in the theater. I would want the feeling of being in the theater and feeling the audience react organically to what's going on stage, because really, I mean, when you're on stage, that pulls the audience pulls it out of you. I saw it happen over and over again. I don't know whether, us performers are hams or whatever it is, but as the audience reacts, you just kind of up your game. I mean, you get in the zone and you just kind of give and give more. And I saw my actors doing that. In fact, the one guy who played Mr. Higgins, both guys actually, I had two different guys play it in the 2 years we had it. But the original guy, I could tell that he was naturally funny.
Okay.
And I I saw this like raw talent and I knew he had it. He was so good he probably could do improv. And so I did I freeze? Am I okay?
No,
All
you're
right.
fine, you're totally fine.
Okay. So I told him, I said, you have total freedom to kind of like improvise, because there's plenty of time for you to talk while Mr. Higgins is being sung because he's doing all this action and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He sings here and there, but I would have loved to have had a little more time to write like little lines because he's so egotistical and obnoxious. And so I was like, you have free reign to just experiment, So he did. And I tell you, I watched it like I don't know how many times that
Yeah,
first run because I was analyzing it. And I was the first one to laugh at some of the things he came up with. It was hilarious.
yeah.
So, I mean, that part came because there was an audience there, and as he said something, they laughed, and then that got his wheels turning, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we'll watch this one," and he can come up with something else. So
I
it's
love it.
fun.
Well, Christy, thanks for what you do. Thanks for contributing to the arts. She's arting, folks. She's arting all the time.
I am.
Arting all the time. I love
I
it.
love
And
that T-shirt.
I have to find one for you, so I gotta find it again. I
That's
can't find it
awesome.
anywhere. I gotta find it, but I love this thing. But no, I love that we have another art enthusiast who's actually someone who's actually trying to make art also available to the
Yeah.
public. And again, wherever you see this, find your local theaters, find out what's going on. I mean, and
Yeah.
see who's producing stuff. And as you said, it's so diverse these days. You may find something you like. My brother was a huge Tudors, Henry VIII, the whole thing. When I talk about 60s, like what? I go, I'm saying they're making musicals out of everything. So it's like just seriously,
Everything.
literally, there's some great. We love the classics, but there's some really
Right.
great new stuff out there that people are trying from everywhere. So just check out
Yeah.
the arts, support
And I
local.
think it's time too. I mean, we have the classics, which is good, but I think it's really time for new material. And I think it's there's a lot out there. And yeah, I mean, I would encourage people, if they want to go to their local theater and suggest this show, tell them
Yes.
it's licensable, and it's comedy and people love to laugh. And especially during COVID, we needed to laugh. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to make it funny.
Yeah.
But just it's available. It's at cmishows.com, and it's available for licensing. And so it's something that I feel like there's a lot out there. I mean, there's stuff down in Indianapolis where they're trying things pre-Broadway, and they're making concerts out of it. And I think it's just so important to support that. So thank you for what you're doing too. I mean, goodness, that's so awesome.
It's my pleasure. No, my pleasure. I'll always champion art as long as I'm still here on this earth. I'll always champion art. And
Awesome.
I have a branch of JLJ Media that's in Clinton, Indiana. So I know Indiana a little bit.
Yeah.
So shout out to
Okay.
my co-producers and everything over there. We're producing stuff out of there. So
Awesome.
I mean, I love the Midwest. This is my favorite things. My family's over there. But Christy Stutzman, and it's the Round Barn Theater. Are you guys on Facebook and stuff? I think you guys are. You guys
Yeah,
are.
we're on Facebook, Round Barn Theater, and we're the Barns at Napanee. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, so it's Music by Christy on Facebook. And there's also musicbychristy.com where you can see all my other shows as well that I'm producing, and you can like listen to snippets and stuff of the different things. And the music is actually on Apple Music and
Spotify everywhere. I
yeah,
got it on my Spotify. It's out there. And Apple. No,
yeah.
Apple. No, Apple. So it was Apple. I got it on Apple. That's what iTunes. I want to call
Okay,
it. It's Apple iTunes.
iTunes, yeah,
It's
yep.
there, folks. And I have it. I've been playing it, so I do. I love it. And I'm gonna find this so we can follow each other. Definitely.
Awesome. Okay,
And good luck on the next thing you're working on. Like you say,
thank you so
you're
much.
next, I mean, good luck to that too. Christy Stutzman, out, you guys. This is the When Call Start After Show. I am James Lott Jr. Our after show is audio, so you can listen to it audio on all streaming service platforms, and it's video on my channel, JLJ Media. I'm the JLJ of JLJ Media, so of course. So follow us there for When Calls to Heart, When Hope Calls. That was a spinoff. We have all kinds of interviews and reviews, and Brian Bird, of course, comes to our show every season at the end and
Wow,
us, and we love Brian. So shout out to Brian and everybody
it's
over there.
awesome.
He's the greatest. And thank you very much for watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.